Senator Cruz, welcome to the Howie Carr Show again.
Howie, good evening. It's always good to be with you.
Well, listen, I got to ask you the first question about the new theme music that Donald Trump is playing at all of his rallies. Let me just play a couple of bars. What's he getting at there, Senator Cruz, with Born in the USA?
Well, look, I think he may shift in his new rallies to playing New York, because, Donald comes from New York and he embodies New York values. And listen, the Donald seems to be a little bit rattled. 4 weeks ago, just about every candidate in the race was taking shots at Donald Trump. Today, just about every candidate's taking shots at me. And that kind of suggests that maybe the race has changed a little bit. And Donald, for the last week, has been unloading at every stop with direct attacks. Now, I don't intend to respond or reciprocate, but I think the reason he is that this race is turning more and more into a two-person race between me and Donald. There's a big separation between the two of us and everybody in the field. And what we're seeing is conservatives are uniting behind our campaign, that they're looking for someone who doesn't just talk a good game on the trail, but actually has a proven record of standing and fighting against Obamacare, standing and fighting against amnesty, standing and fighting to secure the border, standing and fighting to defend the Second Amendment. And I think the other candidates in the race are getting very, very concerned, because if conservatives continue to unite, we win.
Let me play a cut. This is from Hillary Clinton, I guess, at the Des Moines Register, cut 18. This very brief cut. Listen to this, Senator.
He was basically a Democrat before he was a Republican.
She's talking about your good friend, Mr. Born in the USA. What do you agree with Hillary's assessment?
Well, I would say Hillary would know well how to identify Democrats. She has been a partisan Democrat herself, obviously, and she and Donald know each other well. And I do think it's interesting that Hillary Clinton's key supporters are doing everything they can to echo Donald's attacks on me. We've seen the past couple of elections where the Democrats worked very hard to ensure that they faced the Republican they most wanted to face in the general election. And, it may be driven by the fact that the polling right now shows Donald loses to Hillary and loses by a pretty big margin. But I beat Hillary, and I think that's got the Hillary folks a little bit concerned, and so they're doing everything they can to amplify Donald's attacks. I don't intend to go into the mud. I don't intend to engage in the insults. I think what people are looking for is who's got a proven record. Who can I trust? Who do I know what they will do, that they will stand with the working men and women. They'll defend freedom. They'll defend the Constitution. They'll keep this country safe. And I think on all of those, my record is markedly different from every other candidate in the race, which is why conservatives keep uniting behind our campaign.
We're talking to Texas Senator Ted Cruz from the studios of NH1 in Concord, New Hampshire. He's in the Granite State for the first time in a couple of months. What about Donald Trump's statements that you are a Southern Baptist and evangelical, but not too many, as he puts it, not too many evangelicals come out of Cuba? What do you make of that?
Well, listen, anytime someone is attacking your faith, that starts to suggest they're getting really nervous about what's happening in the race. I would be happy to invite Donald to come with me to church anytime he would like. He would certainly be welcome there. At the end of the day, my focus is not to engage in the mudslinging, but rather, listen, what voters are looking for right now is who's prepared to be commander-in-chief, who has the experience, who has the clarity of vision, who has the judgment, who has the strength to keep this country safe, to defeat radical Islamic terrorism. If I am president, we will defeat radical Islamic terrorism. President Obama recently traveled to Europe, and he said he doesn't believe in American leadership or America winning. I got to say, FDR and JFK and Ronald Reagan were all rolling over in their graves at an American president saying that. My view on radical Islamic terrorism, to borrow a page from Ronald Reagan in the Cold War, is very simple. We win, they lose. If I'm elected president, we're not going to weaken. We're not going to simply undermine ISIS. We will utterly and completely destroy ISIS, and as commander-in-chief, I'll keep this country safe.
Well, I don't know if you've seen the ad. I don't know if it's running in Iowa, but there's Hillary is running an ad. You're basically saying that Donald Trump is saying he's going to bomb the bleep out of ISIS, and then there are a few other sound cuts from various other Republican candidates, and then Hillary Clinton comes on and says, or her spokesman says, if you want to stop this from happening, meaning ISIS getting bombed or carpet bombed, as you put it, vote for Hillary. What do you make of that? She's promising her voters she won't bomb ISIS.
Well, look, the modern Democratic Party is getting more and more out of touch. Neither Hillary Clinton nor Barack Obama are even willing to say the words radical Islamic terrorism. They won't identify the enemy, they will not fight against the enemy, and they will not defeat the enemy. And you know what's happening, Howie? It's waking people up all across the country. One of the things that I see at every event we do is people come up to me and say, I'm a Democrat, I voted for Barack Obama, I'm a union member, I'm with you. We're seeing working class men and women who are fed up. I'll tell you, the state of Massachusetts, not exactly a bright red conservative state, we've got an amazing grassroots team. Gary DePiero's leading Massachusetts Citizens for Ted Cruz, an amazing grassroots group of hundreds of conservatives across the state who are fed up. They're fed up with a president who won't keep this country safe and fight jihadists. Instead of fighting the terrorists, President Obama is going to give a speech tonight about taking away the Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms of millions of law-abiding Americans. And I think people are saying enough is enough. Let's get back to the principles that built America and made this country great.
As you know, 10 U.S. sailors are now in the hands of the Iranians.
Yes.
They're being held on Farsi Island. The Iranians claim they're going to give them back. The ships were the boats were disabled. What would President Cruz do with 10 more hostages being taken by Iran? Kind of a flashback to 1979, 1980.
Well, sure. This is a very dangerous situation, and we need to wait to see what the facts are and play out a little bit more. But right now it appears that 2 U.S. naval ships have been detained and 10 sailors are in the custody of Iran. And this is the latest manifestation of the weakness of Barack Obama, that every bad actor, from the Ayatollah Khamenei to Putin in Russia, views Obama as a laughingstock. He is not a credible threat. And the response, listen, Obama sadly has become the Neville Chamberlain of our time. When he signed this Iranian nuclear deal to send $150 billion to a theocratic Ayatollah who chants death to America, it was like Munich, with Chamberlain coming back promising peace in our time. History has not been kind to those who allow theocratic, megalomaniacal murderers to gain the resources to carry out acts of murder. And if I'm elected president on day one, I will rip to shreds this catastrophic Iranian nuclear deal, and we will have a president who makes absolutely clear under no circumstances will Iran be allowed to acquire nuclear weapons.
He's going to brag about it tonight. You understand that? Yeah.
He is. It's one of the reasons I'm not there. I am not in Washington to listen to the State of the Union. I'm celebrating because this is the last State of the Union Barack Obama will ever give, but instead I'm up here in New Hampshire. I'm asking for the support of the men and women on the ground in New Hampshire, and I got to say, the coalition we're seeing conservatives, we're seeing libertarians, we're seeing Tea Party, we're seeing evangelical, all coming together, and if conservatives unite, we win, and that's happening each and every day.
What about the sexual assaults by the Muslim quote-unquote migrants in Germany and Switzerland, Finland, other places? Does this vindicate all the Republican candidates who said we need a timeout on allowing these unvetted Syrians into the country?
Of course it does, and I've introduced legislation in the Senate to suspend all refugees from countries in the Middle East where ISIS or Al-Qaeda control substantial territory. You know, President Obama and Hillary Clinton keep insisting on bringing tens of thousands of Syrian refugees to this country. It's utter lunacy. Just last week, Howie, 2 alleged terrorists were arrested, one in California, one in Texas. Both of them had been Iraqi refugees.
A Sacramento man, as one of them was described in the paper. It says they always do.
Yeah, a Sacramento man who happened to have been vetted by the very same ineffective vetting that President Obama is promising that will be applied to Syrian refugees. That same day, another terrorist in Philadelphia fired 13 shots at a police officer, hitting him 3 times. This terrorist has pledged his allegiance to ISIS, and for 7 years we've had a president who is demonized, who's attacked law enforcement officers. I'll tell you this, Howie, If I'm elected president, the mistreatment, the vilification of police officers will stop, and for law enforcement, for cops, for firemen, for first responders, you will have a commander-in-chief who has your back.
Hillary Clinton told the Des Moines Register yesterday she's going to do everything she can to repeal the Hyde Amendment. You know what that is? It allows taxpayer money to fund abortions at Planned Parenthood and elsewhere in Medicaid. What's your reaction to that?
Well, listen, on the question of abortion, Hillary Clinton's positions are radical and extreme. Hillary Clinton supports unlimited abortion on demand up until the moment of birth, partial birth abortion with a 9-month unborn child, with taxpayer funding, with no parental notification and no parental consent. Howie, those are extreme views. Do you know what percent of Americans agree with Hillary Clinton on abortion? 9%. 91% of Americans say that is out there, that's extreme. And the problem is the modern Democratic Party. They've gone off the deep end. You know, JFK, when he ran for president, he campaigned on massive tax cuts, on 5% economic growth. He campaigned on protecting the religious liberty of every American. He campaigned on defeating Soviet communism. JFK would be tarred and feathered and thrown out of the modern Democratic Party. JFK would be a Republican today, and I am fighting for the very same values that built America, that JFK fought for, that Ronald Reagan fought for: economic growth and jobs and tax cuts and opportunity, protecting our religious liberty and defeating the enemies of this country. And the modern Democratic Party has forgotten those common sense values.
Let me give you an easy question. Is JFK closer to you or to Hillary Clinton?
Much, much closer to me. The policies we're fighting for are the very same, and it's difficult to see many policies of JFK's that the modern Democratic Party would not brand as unacceptable and offensive. They've gotten... Look, JFK fought for his country. Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama will not even say the words radical Islamic terrorism. It's difficult to get further apart polar opposites than that right there.
Their idea of the long twilight struggle is against the Tea Party.
Well, Hillary says, in all seriousness, she describes her enemies as Republicans. Half of the country she views as her enemies. That is fundamentally wrong. Look, my enemies aren't Democrats. My enemies are the Ayatollah Khamenei, are ISIS, are zealots who are trying to murder Americans. And every day we are seeing Democrats, we're seeing Reagan Democrats, union members, working men and women who are saying, enough is enough. Let's get back to the basic common sense values that built America. That's the Reagan Coalition. It's uniting behind our campaign. There are people all over the country that are going to tedcruz.org. You know, we've had over 700,000 contributions at tedcruz.org. The American people are fed up with politicians lying to them, and they're looking for someone who tells the truth and does what he says he will do.
One final question for you, Senator Cruz. Greg Abbott, the governor of your state, has joined a number of prominent conservatives recently, and including Marco Rubio, in calling for an Article 5 convention of the states. Mark Levin, your friend, our friend, is for it. What's your position on the convention? Would you advocate for a Article 5 convention of the states?
Well, listen, Greg Abbott is a dear friend of mine, has been my mentor. He's a fantastic governor. And I think what Greg Abbott is saying is manifesting what is growing more and more on the grassroots, which is Washington is ignoring the American people, is refusing to take up common sense constitutional amendments like a balanced budget amendment or term limits. I'm fighting for a balanced budget amendment and term limits for both members of Congress and Supreme Court justices. And let me say this, Howie.
So could I mark you down as a yes?
If Congress doesn't act and take up these amendments, we will have a convention of the states. The people are rising up, and either Washington listens or a convention of the states will exercise its constitutional authority to make Washington listen. One way or another, we are going to fix these problems, and I'm going to fight to do it using any means necessary.
Ted Cruz, thanks for being with us here on the Howie Carr Show, and give our best to our friends at NH1 in Concord, and thank them for setting up this interview. It was really good.
Thank you, Howie. God bless.
Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.